What's up everyone? So in my last video, I taught you the different ways to forecast in Excel, and I showed you the different functions that exist that you can use to do the calculations. But in this video here, I'm going to show you how to take those calculations and how I would take those calculations and how I would build an actual forecast against the budget and against the prior year. All right, so let's jump right into Excel. Also, I want to mention that if you have not seen the previous video, I recommended you watch that video before watching this one, just so that you can understand the context and the file that we're going to be using to actually complete this work. I did all of the work with you in that last video, so you won't be just lost on what we're doing and where we got these numbers from. So you can check that link. This link will be right down in the description below. Okay, so jumping right into Excel, we're gonna look right into the file that we were using in the last video. And the second tab is actually where you see column B is the actual forecast. We're actually gonna build the actual forecast using the math from the forecast functions in the previous video. So I'm gonna show you here from this tab how we're gonna pull these numbers. So we have highlighted, of course, was our seasonalities, which I'm going to show you what to do when we get to our seasonality months. But we're going to start here where it says upper bound. Now we rarely ever use the lower bound. The lower bound is for when the business is going under and things are really bad. So if the business is performing extremely poorly is the only time when you would forecast and you would utilize the lower bound. Because the lower bound would actually give you data if the business is losing money and the business is really struggling. So if the business is not struggling and it does not show any indication that it's going to struggle, you do not use the lower bound. It does not make sense. It'll only make your numbers worse. So worser numbers is harder to explain to upper management. Or if you're an entrepreneur, it's only confusing because you're like, how am I going to lose this much money? And if I did this. So don't use the lower bound, but you have the lower bound just in case something happens and you could reference it. That's really what it's there for in this case. But the upper bound, that's where you're going to take majority of your numbers except for your seasonality numbers in certain cases. So for here, for January, I'm going to just take this, copy this number, go to forecast summary, and I'm going to paste value. There's nothing wrong with this number. This number is fine. Now February, you go here, we see that February was a month of seasonality. So in that case, when it's a month of seasonality, we take the seasonality number for that month, seasonality forecasted number, and we put that there. And as you see, it's under the budget, but it's still an improvement from the prior year. So this is why you do this side by side, because you want to give context to the numbers. But you also want to show, hey, we may not hit the budget number because the budget is the most optimistic approach for the business. That's the optimism. The forecast is the nuanced approach. Like from a nuanced perspective, this is what we think the business is going to do. So then we're gonna go into March. So both March and April are both regular months. There's not seasonality, so we're gonna just use shift down to copy both of those at once. Take that, and then just go here right into where March is, and just hit paste values, and it'll bring both of those numbers in. So we have those numbers as well. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just drag. No, that's not what I want to do. Okay. So next, we're going to look at both the summer months, which both of those months are months of seasonality, as you can see here. Now, this is gonna be a rare case, but I'm going to take the seasonality numbers for consistency, but I'm also going to explain to you some things here in just a moment. So as you can see, these 2 months are both under the budget and under prior year, but they're periods of seasonality. But so what I'm gonna do just for now is I'm going to highlight those. Let's see, let's use a light red. We're gonna highlight those 2 light red because we're gonna come back after we're done with all these numbers, and we're gonna talk a little bit more about these, and we're gonna talk about how we can course correct these numbers here for these 2 and make it to at least beat the prior year in our forecast. Because like I said, what you want to do is you want to have a forecast that's accurate. It does not have to be exact, but you want it to be accurate. So moving on to the July month. Both July and August are regular months. So that means that we can take those months, 8, 9, shift down, Control C, and take this here, paste values. All right, so we're going into September. This September is also a seasonality month. So we're gonna take that number. We're gonna paste value into here. As you can see, both August beats both the budget number and the prior year. You see this number for September does not beat the budget, but it does beat the prior year number. So if you round this number, this is 3.8 versus a 3.7. So we saw that there is some sort of an improvement for that number. So then we're gonna go to October. And for October, that was a regular month. We'll just take that upper bound number and paste values. It beats both the budget and it beats the prior year. So this is a pretty good month considering, you know, what we're looking at with our data. So these last 2 months here, very interesting months, because these last 2 months are periods of seasonality. We did 3.7. Now the seasonality numbers are telling us they're going to be under what we even did the last year, which is somewhat of which is an issue. Not even somewhat, it's an issue. So we're also going to highlight these. And as you see, our total number is 51.4 million, which is better than the prior year, which could be acceptable considering that it still shows an improvement, but it's still off from what the budgeted number is, and it's off to a point where you would get questions about this. This would create questions. However, you didn't do anything technically wrong, but let me show you how to actually fix this. Okay, so right here in column E, I'm gonna just do this as revised forecast. Okay, so we're gonna just do this as revised forecast. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna do shift, we're gonna do shift down, and we're gonna just copy all of the numbers from this forecast in column B, except for the ones that are highlighted. We're not gonna bring those numbers over. And instead, I'm gonna show you exactly what we're gonna do instead. So let's go here. Copy you. We're gonna paste values. All right, so then we're gonna drag this formula over here. Okay. So how do we fix these numbers? What do we do to fix these numbers? So if you remember, we took the seasonality numbers for these. However, what we can do in this case is we can take the upper bound. Now you would ask me, why would we take the upper bound when we've been taking the seasonality? Is because you remember in this formula, the upper bound considers both the confidence and seasonality. So in this case, whereas we're factoring in seasonality, but we're also doing the 99% confidence. And we don't use the lower bound because the business is not struggling. However, these numbers during cases and periods where if it's lower than both the prior year and the budgeted number shown for just the seasonality, then you can't take that number because that number isn't factoring in the confidence, if that makes sense to you. So this number doesn't factor in confidence. And the confidence is based on 99% confidence that the sales will increase by this number. So in those cases, only in the cases where you have this here, where it's below both the budget and the prior year, is where I would still take the upper bound, because the upper bound, like I said, it is still accounting for the seasonality. It's still accounting for the seasonality. The seasonality is added in the math of that. So let's take that and let's see how that impacts your numbers. So as you see, I copied in the upper bound for these 2 months here. And as you see, the improvement from 3.7 to 4.4 rounded, or 4.36, if that's what you want to say. And also from that to 4. So it goes basically to 4.3. It went from 3.6 to 4.3, which is, significant, and it's not outlandish because it's within the range of what we budgeted. Although they're both still slightly under budget, it's within the range of what we budgeted. So that lets you know that your numbers are more accurate. And we're gonna do the same thing for the last 2 months. And let's see where these numbers round off at. And boom. So if you see that, that's 54.2 billion, which is slightly over the budget, but it's close enough to where it is accurate. This is the most correct. So this is why I put revised. Now, I'm going to change these numbers. I'm going to change this to something here that's going to really be really cool for you. So this right here, instead of forecast, we're going to just change this to instead. Keep this consistent with that. Okay, so if you see, I changed this column B to worst case and this to best case. So now this is your forecast, and you see the worst case scenario, we will beat prior year. We'll do about 51.4 million dollars in revenue. Best case, we're going to beat the prior year, and we're going to be on target for what we budget. This is how you take the numbers, utilizing the forecast functions, and actually build a proper, correct, and accurate forecast in Excel. All right, so that's going to wrap it up for this video. I want to thank you for watching. In the next video, if you're interested in knowing how to further this conversation, we're going to take this and actually create a strategic plan and strategic recommendations for the business based on our forecast. And in a future video after that, I'm going to actually show you how to develop some KPIs that you can look at to use to track versus actual over the course of the year to see, are you actually hitting these numbers and what that actually looks like. But until that time, guys, I'll see you in the next video.